My name is Emily. I'm 26, ambitious, and focused on my career. I live with my husband, John, and lately, I've been thinking seriously about starting a family, but John insists we should first build and settle into our own home. So, we've been saving diligently for that dream. Still, I can't shake the growing desire to have a child. Every time I bring it up, John shuts down the conversation with the same response: not until we have our house. It hurts how easily he dismisses my feelings. I've started pushing myself harder to contribute financially, hoping it'll bring that future closer. We've been married for a year now, and I've begun to notice a troubling pattern. John rarely considers my opinions. I saw hints of this when we were dating, but I once mistook it for confidence. Now, it just feels like disrespect. A marriage should be a partnership, but more and more, it feels like I'm being sidelined, especially with his parents living nearby and playing a constant role in our lives. John visits them often, claiming it helps us cut food costs, but I've found out he also spends on drinks with coworkers, expenses he conveniently omits while scrutinizing mine. He lectures me about turning off lights early and conserving hot water, yet never holds himself to the same standards. It's exhausting being the only one expected to make sacrifices. I try not to let anger consume me, but his double standards and constant impositions make it difficult, and the pressure only increases when we visit his parents. It's been a year since you got married. When will we get good news? We want a grandchild soon. His parents chime in every visit. I glance at John. He scowls, probably wishing they'd keep quiet, but he never says anything. I want a child too, but he won't budge, and instead of talking to their son, my in-laws put the pressure on me. Sometimes, I want to speak up, but their expectations weigh me down. After one particularly tense meal, John excuses himself, saying he's going for a smoke. That's when his mother turns to me and says, "If you want to be a proper wife, maybe you should quit your job." Maybe that's why John isn't paying attention to you. It stings, as if my job is the reason we don't have kids, as if I'm the problem. I've had enough. It was John who asked me to work. I say sharply, why not talk to him before you start blaming me? My anger bubbles over. I want children, but John's the one who won't even talk about it until we have a house. Why don't you pressure him instead of constantly lecturing me? They sit in stunned silence. I offer a curt apology, then excuse myself. At the front door, I find John smoking, completely unaffected. He raises an eyebrow. Leaving already? I say nothing and head to the car. He joins me a moment later, trying to brush it off. Why not visit my parents? It saves us money. You want a house and kids, right? I snap. If saving money is so important, how about you stop going out drinking, or quit smoking? Don't act like skipping one meal at your parents' makes a difference. Everyone deserves some peace. I pause, then continue. You constantly expect me to sacrifice, cut hot water, switch off lights early, budget every penny, but what do you give up? Nothing. If I'm the only one who has to do this, maybe I don't even want the house anymore. John tries to shrug it off. It's not that serious. But it is. How much more do you expect me to endure? I ask. What angers me most is the way he plays innocent in front of his parents, letting them believe I'm the reason they don't have a grandchild. It's not true. I've told him over and over, I want children. I've wanted them for a while. Watching him struggle with my anger gave me a small sense of release, but it didn't solve anything. I'm still left with the same question I've been carrying for months. What now? I stared out the car window, deliberately ignoring John. A month later, everything began to shift. My father's brother passed away, an uncle I had rarely spoken of. He had owned several plots of land, a grand mansion, and had lived a life of quiet luxury. His death marked a turning point, not just for me, but unexpectedly, for John too. Wow, John said, visibly impressed. I didn't know you had such a successful relative. A few days later, I was contacted by my uncle's lawyer regarding the inheritance. Since this matter solely concerned me, I asked John politely to excuse himself from the meeting. He seemed uncomfortable with the topic of inheritance, and I wanted to avoid any tension. After 3 hours of legal explanations and paperwork, I thanked the lawyer and saw him out. But when I looked around afterward, John was nowhere to be found. I assumed he'd stepped out to give me privacy and went about preparing dinner, thinking little of it. What I didn't expect was what came 3 months later. There's something I want to show you, John said one afternoon, inviting me on a drive. Curiosity stirred as we entered a quiet residential neighborhood, but confusion quickly replaced it when we pulled up to a house I didn't recognize. John rang the doorbell, and, to my surprise, his parents answered. "You made it," his father beamed. "So, when are you and Emily moving in?" "We were thinking the end of this month." I froze. This wasn't their house, and I had never agreed to move in with them, especially after making it clear I no longer wanted to visit. I shot John a look, demanding an explanation. "Don't get so worked up," he said casually. "I thought if we all lived together, maybe you and my mom could finally get along. Besides, this will be our new home. You need to start cooperating on the baby issue, too." "Live together?" I echoed in disbelief. John nodded. "It's a two-family house. I always planned for us to live with my parents eventually. What's the problem now?" I stood stunned, trying to process what was unfolding. Even if I looked past our strained relationship with his parents, this extravagant home didn't make sense financially. We'd been scrimping and saving for over a year. There was no way we could afford this. As if reading my mind, John added, "My dad and I pitched in. We used up our savings, but that's okay, right?" My heart sank. All that saving, gone, and it wasn't even a decision we made together. Then came the real blow. "I heard your uncle's inheritance is worth nearly $700,000, John continued, watching me closely. "If you just use some of it to reimburse us for the house, everything works out, doesn't it?" I stared at him, stunned. He had built this future for us based on money that wasn't his, hadn't even been offered, and never once asked what I wanted. My inheritance was never his to assume, let alone spend. When I refused, his expression darkened. He reached into his bag and pulled out a divorce form, already filled out, his signature at the bottom. "If you're going to be selfish with our money and won't live with my family, then maybe we should just get a divorce." I took the form from his hand, calm and deliberate. "Fine, if living together is the only alternative, then I choose divorce." I placed the form in my bag and turned to leave. His parents looked stunned, their mouths slightly agape, but I didn't care. I was done explaining myself. "Oh, and by the way," I said over my shoulder, "I declined the inheritance." John's face froze in shock. Without another word, I walked away. I didn't wait for their reaction. I didn't offer a parting glance. I took a bus back to our apartment, back to the quiet space I still, for now, called home. Without hesitation, I filled in my name on the divorce form John had already signed. The moment it was done, I submitted the paperwork and headed straight to a home improvement store to buy cardboard boxes. It was time to pack. Knowing I couldn't handle everything alone, I hired a moving company. Luckily, with it being the off-season, scheduling a quick relocation wasn't an issue. As I was packing, I heard a commotion at the front door. John had returned. I had the chain lock fastened, so I spoke to him through the gap. "Sorry, the chain's on. I don't know what you might do when you're upset. I still have packing to do, so could you stay at your parents' place for a few days?" "I won't accept a divorce," he declared. I blinked in disbelief. "You handed me the divorce form, remember? Signing it means you agree to it." He frowned, frustrated but quickly changed the subject. "Why would you give up a $690,000 inheritance? Anyone else would have jumped at it." Ah, so that's what this was about. He had likely only heard part of the conversation I'd had with the lawyer, just enough to latch on to that figure. I suspected he'd taken that information to his parents, and in their haste, they bought the two-family house based on assumptions rather than facts. I clarified. The inheritance came to me only because every other heir, my uncle's 3 sons, 2 daughters, wife, and grandchildren, refused it. Yes, on paper it was worth $690,000, but the mansion had to be demolished. Land maintenance costs were sky-high, and he had debts. After careful consideration with the lawyer, I decided it was smarter to renounce it. John looked stunned. "So even if you'd accepted it, there wouldn't have been much left? That's fraud." "No," I replied calmly. "That's what happens when someone only hears half the conversation." He fell silent. Perhaps he finally realized how much he'd misunderstood, and how little he had trusted me. "But it's too late now," I said firmly. "You handed me that form. You made your choice, and now you want to undo it, as if none of it mattered? If you truly didn't want this, you should have come after me the moment I walked out." I reminded him that regardless of his mother's opinion or feelings about the divorce, she wasn't the one who'd recklessly spent savings on a house. She didn't know the weight of money, never having earned it herself. And now, they wanted to tie me to their mistake? I added, "You haven't even submitted the papers yet, have you? If you do it now, we can still be together." He pleaded, "Please, let's just live in that house." "I've already submitted them," I replied. This is done. He stood there, slumped outside the door, stunned and speechless. I didn't have time to console him, not anymore. I had packing to finish and a life to restart. Eventually, he left. I completed the move soon after and informed my workplace about the divorce. My boss had acted as a mediator once, so I felt obligated to explain and apologize. I also shared the news with coworkers who had attended our wedding. But then, in a completely inappropriate move, John barged into my department during lunch break. "It's ridiculous you're talking about our divorce here," he snapped. "I wish you hadn't said anything." In front of everyone, he launched into a bizarre confession, how he had wrongly assumed I was inheriting wealth and bought a two-family house without consulting me. When I refused to live with his parents, I chose divorce. His outburst only drew sympathy toward me. My coworkers avoided him, and it wasn't long before he quit his job altogether. Sometime after that, a male colleague approached me quietly. "I've actually liked you for a long time," he confessed. "I hope, someday, we can build a home together, one where we talk, listen, and truly respect each other."